was Donnie, he was here.
Who?
He's here.
Big Don.
Big dog.
Oh, Don. I was like, hold on.
Big dog.
There would be ads.
Whatever.
And yours is
There's plenty of other times.
I know, when they say Don, I think they're talking to me.
Yeah, Don.
I have some DVD.
Big dog.
Where do you want this?
I don't know if I have a DVD player though.
Oh, you want to try?
No, I should just bring my
You can use the laptop?
You can use a laptop, I guess, yeah.
Should I just bring in my portable DVD player?
Not on a regular basis, considering I think we should just be able to play.
I'm bringing my HDMI cord.
Can't you play DVDs on your phone yet, or no?
No.
No? Man.
Somebody didn't do that.
Yeah, what? How? Like, Samsung makes those, right? So why does my phone, like, this costs more than a DVD player? Why is this not?
Oh, you need this?
Yeah, I guess so.
I should just be able to say it's perfect, and it's perfect. When
Streaming live.
Get the S5.
Yeah. See, do they have that yet?
Oh, those are
What?
I heard that's like waterproof, which is cool.
It is water.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Finally.
Even though
Took you-
Sony did it, but like way before.
Yeah, it took you 900 years. Like,
Come on.
come on, you guys. You're spending trillions of dollars on development. You can't make my phone waterproof in 1999. Are you here?
I have a case. It's life-proof or whatever. It's the same cost as like an OtterBox case, and you can just drop it.
I probably just say whenever that is, which is until moving guys. So I don't like cell phones. Hashtag where is Greg? Hashtag who's out there?
So we could use,
Wait a minute, Greg.
Yeah, a little bit.
Oh no, we can take it.
yeah, the camera is on. But this one actually, moves 10 pounds.
Are we,
As opposed to the other one.
we're streaming now?
We're streaming now.
Is it right now?
Removes.
Like right now?
Like right now.
I'll mix up the social medias.
Cool.
Do you want to cue the first one up?
Yeah, sure. Cool. Let's do that.
Are you on Twitter?
What's that?
Are you on Twitter?
Well, this
I'm
is
not on Twitter.
This is Louis Guerra. How do you pronounce your last name?
Guerra.
Guerra.
Oh, Guerra.
Okay,
Guerra, yeah, Louis Guerra. How's everyone doing?
Good. Related to David.
So I understand that he is a assistant director on many of the films and shows that you've probably seen, like Cloverfield and Enchanted, and I think I saw like Law and Order on there too. But you know way better than I probably could figure out what you've done. So I'm sure you'll have a better introduction than I can give you.
No, that's cool. Well, thanks for having me. My friend Terry asked me to come, so I'm happy to be here. This is a summer film class. I just want to know who I'm talking to.
This is Globesville, and this is it's like a culminating class for students who are either in production or in journalism.
Okay.
And it's built around, what we're trying to do is kind of mimic the outside world by creating a company. It's actually a startup company that's a web channel.
Got
It's a
it.
web channel that produces live live music show. We have a live sports show. We have a number of live elements where we're trying to incorporate global Skype interaction with alumni and,
Okay.
and current students.
Okay.
So we're in the summer. It's the first time we have had it in the summer, and it's a very kind of a small group. There's some volunteers here today, and people who are interested in seeing what you.
No, I'm happy to hear. So let me ask you. Well, let me just get your names real quick if I can, and just go around. So,
I'm Andre.
Andre.
I'm a senior.
Are you a grad student?
I'm a grad student.
All right.
I'm Vikram. Vikram
From India.
from India.
Cool. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
All right.
Hi, I'm just from here.
I'm just
He's a grad student.
I'm from here, I'm from Sasset.
All right.
He's asking
Jassy?
for names.
Yes.
He's asking for names.
Oh, John Murray.
Okay.
David Tasset.
And David.
He's from here.
Sweet. All right. Well, cool.
Oh, and just so you know, I'm not gonna be rude. I'm gonna live tweet this. So if you see me typing on my computer, it's not because I'm ignoring you. It's because I'm listening to everything you're saying
Okay.
and putting it on the
Already putting
internet.
on three. All right. How long does this class go till?
It goes to
How long do you want to?
4:30.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you know, so I always ask, because some are like an hour, some are 2, and I want to give you guys a chance to ask the questions you want, but also show you some stuff. So, well, first I should ask you guys, how many of you are at this school or you've selected a major you've selected because your hopes and aspirations are to direct movies or TV. And don't be ashamed, you want to be directors. Anyone here want to be producers? Writers? You can raise your hand more than once, right? Any actors here?
I would do that.
You would do
Why
that?
not?
Okay. Editors? Yeah, you would do that too.
Well, maybe she ask anything that somebody doesn't want to do?
Anyone here want to do something with music when you get out of here?
I like it.
Yeah, in terms of, paying your bills and making a career of it? Okay. Anyone want to be an assistant director? Really? Okay.
I will do
Usually no hands
anything.
go up. So that's what I do. And so what I always, usually saying is all those positions I've talked about in the beginning, director and producer and writer, those are the creative positions. And like everyone else, and there's no shame that I want to be a director, and I hope to get that chance. But I didn't, when I started this, I didn't have an uncle in the business. I don't know Steven Spielberg or any of that, so I kind of had to work my way up. And the first thing I did was intern. And I got kind of lucky. I interned through college. I went to film school out in Chicago. And through an internship I secured in my senior year, the people on the film crew took a liking to me and they said, when you graduate, you should keep in touch with us. And the first thing I did after I got out of school was forget to keep in touch with them. And I got offered a job in advertising and I took it because I thought it was cool and it paid like $30,000 a year and that was a lot of money for a 22-year-old. And I hated it. And I did it for like a year, and after working for 6 months in like the back office, they finally got me into production and I started liking it. And then they said, oh, Louis, you're really good. We want to move you over to selling airtime. And I hated it again. And that's when I remembered my contacts, my internship. And I started making the calls, and they remembered me. And they said, well, we have nothing for you, but call us in a month. And that was, in like July. And in August, I called. They said, we have nothing for you, call us in a month. In September, I called. And this went on and on and on until the following March. The following March, the guy who was the supervisor of the woman I interned for, which was on a movie called Jacob's Ladder years ago, said, all right, I got something for you, but you got to come down to Dallas, Texas. You got to fly yourself down here, put yourself up, and I'll pay you $50 a day. And I said, I'll take it. This is all true, and I quit my job for $30,000 a year or $28,000, whatever it was at the time, and I flew myself to Dallas, and it was the best move I ever made because I was working on a major motion picture, and it was called JFK. And Kevin Costner, who was the star of it, had just won the Best Director for Dances with Wolves. So this was back, I'm dating myself, but this is back in the early 90s. And I worked on JFK and Dealey Plaza for about 3 weeks, recreating that assassination scene. At the end of the 3 weeks, the crew was moving on to Louisiana. And the people who were my supervisors said, we can't take you, Louis, but it's great that you're here in Dallas, and we really wish you lived in New York, because we're from New York. And I said, I am from New York. And they said, you're from New York, and you flew yourself down here, and you worked on this? I said, yeah, and they had no idea. So then they were more impressed. And they said, well, when we get back, you call us, and we'll be back and done with this film in November. And this time I remembered. In November, I called him, and his name was Joe, and I said, Joe, it's Louis. I was your production assistant. I'm the guy that brought you water when it was 110 degrees out in Dallas. And he goes, yeah, I remember you. And then I started working with this guy, Joe, who was a second assistant director. And his boss was another Joe, a famous Joe named Joe Reedy, who was Martin Scorsese's AD. He was the first AD. So they kind of took me with them on their next 6 or 7 films. And I wasn't working every day until a little movie came along called The Bronx Tale, and they had an opening, and then I got to work every day. And through that, I learned about being an assistant director. And if you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer it for you. But basically what an AD does is he serves as a liaison between the producer and the director and the crew, and the producer and the director and the cast. And it's our job to schedule the movie or the TV show in the most economical and efficient way, but still get the director's vision across. And it's our job to run the set, let everyone know what's going on, because by getting the information out, you are telling people what's happening and in what order, and then they can execute to their departments what's going to make the most sense. So you're not wasting, minutes and minutes and minutes, which adds up to thousands of dollars. Roughly, it costs about $40,000 to $50,000 an hour to shoot something in a high budget production. So when it's the assistant director's job to plan a day, and you're standing around for 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes because you haven't had a game plan or executed your plan properly, you're costing the company $20,000, for staying around. the same thing like a weather delay, the training, at least then you have an excuse. It starts pouring on you, you gotta wait for the rain to stop. Then you can say, this is why it's costing us time and money. So that's what an assistant director does. So from the day I start work, I'm starting a project in 3 weeks, and I'll show you the trailer if you're interested. I get a script. It's my job to break down the script, and I break down all the elements. And if you guys had experience in this, in any of this, does that make sense? Okay, so I take a script and I break it down into scenes. And let's say there are just 10 scenes in a script, and 3 of them take place in a restaurant, in a high-end restaurant, and 1 takes place at an amusement park, and 2 are driving scenes, and the other 3 are walk and talks. Well, as an assistant director, I would say I want to try to do those 3 restaurants together if they're in the same restaurant. 1, so I'm paying the restaurant once. 2, so I'm dressing it. The art department's in there 1 time, dressing it, because we're going to go to a real restaurant and find the place. And 3, maybe those 3 scenes take more than a day of work. But then I got to schedule over 2 days, so maybe I do it Monday and half to Tuesday. So my job is to put it into the most efficient order. I wouldn't want to do it Monday, then leave for 3 days and come back Friday, because then the restaurant's got all this film equipment in it for 3 days and they can't be open for business. So those are things that the director doesn't really have to worry and shouldn't worry about, but I do. And he's worried about how he's going to tell the story, what are his shots going to be, which is maybe what I'll get to one day. But for now, I got to worry about how do I help him execute that vision. And then I report it to the producer. So what I want to show you now is, if you wouldn't mind, it's chapter 13. If you could cue it up on the Peacemaker. And then it's, once you get to it, you could, if are you able to fast forward on there a little bit? Maybe? Okay.
Wait for the lights.
Might take a second.
Technically, if the director has a heart attack, you can slip over into his chair.
Yeah, technically, but everyone else tries to. So anyone ever hear this?
What is
Pretty big budget movie. I was not an assistant director on this, I was a production assistant, but I show it because it's entertaining to watch. But it was filmed entirely in New York before 9/11.
Just say the name, please. I can't read it from here.
What's that?
I can't.
Peacemaker.
Oh, it's called The Peacemaker. Stars Nicole Kidman and George Clooney. Steven Spielberg had a company, which I think is now defunct, Spielberg Kassenberg Geffen Company, and this was their first film, directed by a woman also, Mimi Leder. So if you go to chapter 13, which is the next one, if you hit next one more time. Yeah, right there.
Laptop's a little funky.
You worked on 200 cigarettes?
Yeah, yes.
Jim Jarmusch.
Can you hit next, or is it?
He's trying to get over there.
Oh, it's the mouse keyboard.
Let me see if I can get a USB mouse and go over it.
Why is it good as it used to
No, Andre's on vacation.
He's got it.
There you go.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay.
There you go, 13, that's it.
Presidential directive.
So how was it working with George Clooney and Nicole?
No, they were fantastic. Yeah, they were great. So now if you're able to fast forward it, we don't have to worry about all this part. This will be the longest of the 3 clips I'll show you. You probably fast forward a little faster.
What were you responsible for there?
So I was the key production assistant. So there were 3 or 4 assistant directors on this, and I was the guy in charge of all their support staff, which were about 50 of us. And I was the head of the 50 production assistants, which basically were what I'll call the lockup personnel that kept the streets secure and set all the extras and worked with the assistant directors. A lot of what I did was cueing George Clooney and Nicole Kidman in the scenes. Okay, so almost there.
What year is this?
This is probably about 95, 94. Okay, so right here you can stop it. You can play it rather. That's perfect. So we'll watch this sequence. It's basically about a guy who suffered an attack in his home country. And he's taking revenge on the U.S. and he's taking a nuclear bomb into the States. And Clooney and Kidman are onto him, and they know that he's just arrived. And he's got it in his backpack. And he just left as they arrived to his hotel. Is there volume here, or?
It's the speakers right here.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
On the other side, no, other speakers.
He goes into the church with a lot of kids. So that sequence you all just saw, which was about 12 minutes. You know how long that took to film?
I'm gonna guess half a year, 6 months.
No, not half.
No, that would-
3 or 4 weeks.
The whole movie was about a half year.
3 or
You
4
say a
weeks.
month?
3 or 4 weeks.
Anyone else?
5 days.
Wow, 3 or 4 weeks, half a year, 5 days. Took 12 days, so pretty close. 12 days. But 12, Monday through Friday. Actually, I'm sorry. That sequence was a Saturday through Wednesday schedule because we needed the weekends to close the streets.
Right.
In order to cooperate with the city, which is something the assistant director does. Like, how do we film this? How do we get permission from the city? So 12 days. Thanks a lot. And it was all daylight, so we started every day about 5 a.m. And those 600 extras came in every day about 3 a.m. to get ready, which means the crew, the hair and makeup wardrobe people that get them dressed, like the Girl Scouts and all those people, would have to come in at that time. And we shot this during the summer months, so it did get dark pretty late, but we were done filming every day about 7 p.m. Once the sun started going down. Something we're responsible for is making sure that any minors we work with are not being abused, that we're respecting their hours. So I do remember when we got to that scene in the school that you just saw, it was pitch black out. It was dark. We went way over. That was one of the last scenes we filmed. The church sequence that you didn't see, if you want to rent it, you can watch it, was one of the first things we filmed, because that was like a big explosion that we did. But it was dark out, and these kids had to be off the clock by 10 p.m. because it was, that's the law. You have to get them home by a certain time. And it was probably 8:30. So that whole sequence when the bell rings and the kids rushed out and everything, we really rushed that. We did that whole thing in about an hour and a half. Probably needed a lot more time. So the director had to make compromises. And the AD had a rush thing. And that's something you don't want to do when you're doing gunshot and squib hits, and so sometimes you're under the gun. You have to deal with that. So one thing we do is, in order to inform the crew, what happens is we issue a call sheet. Anyone know the TV show Elementary? You guys know the time? I did the pilot of Elementary, so this is called a call sheet. And what it does is it explains each scene that we're shooting that day. And so it's a date, Tuesday, March 20th, 2012. And it's day 2 of 13. This was a 13-day TV pilot. And it shows all the scenes we're shooting for the day, what actors, what the continuity day is, how long the scene is. And what I do as an AD, we start at 6:30 a.m. I put on my call sheet that my assistant does, and then I approve, is the times that we're going to shoot each scene for. So this is like 6:30 to 8:30, and then we move sets, 8:30 to 8:45. Next scene's 8:45 to 11:45. Well, how do I get those times? I have a discussion with the director and the director of photography. I say, how long is it going to take to shoot each of these scenes? What are the shots we want to achieve? So I'll pass these out. I do need them back, but you guys can look. There's plenty of them. So there's like 14 of them, one for each day. And you can look at on some. Those are the actual call sheets. On the back are the attachments that the location department gets you. And they hand it out to all the crew. Where are we shooting? Where do we park? Where are the trucks going? It's a very big coordinated effort, and we all have to be on our game to make the day happen, because there's so much going on. Here we have set 1 and set 2. They're blocks apart in Manhattan. This is on Chamber Street, Lower Manhattan. And then we do a company move to Central Park later on. So it's like a big thing. We got to move all the trucks. And here we go up to the park. We show where all these sets are that we're shooting, all in one day, all in the space of 12 hours or 13 hours. Down here, we have all the props, all the vehicles, the wardrobe notes, the set dressing notes. And you can look at them. Each one is different. Over on the left, someone asked people where all the extras come from. These are where all the extras are for each scene. And each of those call sheets is different. Now, where does all this come from? This call sheet, which my assistant does every day, comes from something I do in prep. And that's called a one-liner. This is the one-liner for Elementary. So all of these scenes and all of the scenes on all of those call sheets that you have are on one document called the one-liner. This is the Bible that I'm responsible for giving to the producer and the director, saying, this is what we're shooting on each day. And over here in red, for the entire show, the entire pilot of Elementary, I generate the times. that I think it's gonna take to shoot every scene of every day of the entire show. And then the accountant gets this, and then they put money to it. What is this gonna cost us? Lewis says that on Friday, March 23rd, I've got 7 pages I gotta shoot that I decided, based on my knowledge and expertise, what I think is gonna be something feasible that the crew can do. We're gonna start inside a police station at 1:30 in the afternoon, PM, and wrap at 2 in the morning. When you subtract lunch, which on a union crew is a half hour, 1:30 to 2 a.m., it's 12 and a half hours. If you subtract lunch, that's a 12-hour day, and that's what I'm permitted to do. And any day I go over 12 hours, I want to let my bosses know that. The day before, we have a cop bar, and then we have to move up to a rooftop, which is a very big, complicated move. If you watch the show, you know that, what's his name? Johnny Lee Miller? Is that what he is? Yeah, there we go. That he's got an aviator, a beehive on the rooftop. He collects bees. This is where it was established in the pilot. And it was a big, complicated scene. So I had to allow plenty of time. I allowed 4.5 hours to
Isn't it
shoot
against
2
the law
people.
to have a bee thing on top of the roofs in Manhattan?
Is it Sherlock Holmes?
Yeah, Sherlock Holmes does it.
So it must not be illegal.
Yeah. No,
I don't
just,
watch
you
the
know,
show.
British, so it doesn't matter.
But anyway, so we had to have a whole bee aviator, the beekeeper.
Well,
up
that's
there and
what
all that
my
stuff.
concern was, like logistics like that for you guys when you're shooting stuff and what is allowed and not allowed from the city. Is that something you handle?
As far as the bees, you
Well, it's
mean?
fake though.
Well, like, I know the bees are fake, but I'm talking about like.
Well, they were real.
I'm
No,
just
no,
talking
no,
about-
no.
But we had
I'm
a
not even
beekeeper.
just talking about, I'm just talking about in general with things like that when you're shooting.
When it's a private building, it's totally allowable. If we were gonna bring bees into the Museum of Natural History or something, we need permission
Yeah.
from the city. But that was a private
But is that
building.
something like, stuff like logistics like that with the city, is that something you handle or?
Usually the locations department handles it and they work for us. For me, I'm in the production department. So I say to the location, what they do is they find me 5 buildings. That's gonna be Sherlock Holmes' building, let's say. And I go with the director and the production designer, and if I can, the director of photography of the 5 buildings. And the director says he picks the one that he likes the best. And then the DP picks the one he likes the best. And they're the creative people. And then the production designer picks the one he likes the best. And then they see if they can come to an agreement. Then they come to me and they say, can we do this? And I say yes, but you gotta sacrifice this and this if you want that location. So one of Sherlock Holmes's homes, now it's a set piece, but in the pilot, was way up in the Bronx. That's the one we used. Another one was in Brooklyn, a third one was in Lower Manhattan. Well, we have to find other locations tied to those so that we can make our days. You know, if we're shooting at his home in the Bronx, I need to find another location in the Bronx. Why? Because I'm in charge of a crew of 80 to 100 people, and the logistics of moving them downtown to do other things is a waste of time and money, and the producer won't allow it. So we have to come up with sets that are also going to work in that area. But that was an important set piece, so that took precedence. So his roof was not in the Bronx, his roof was in Brooklyn, which is where he lives in the show. But shooting the interiors was all in the Bronx. So on a different day, we went to the rooftop, we went to Brooklyn, we did the whole beekeeping scene up there. You can look at this too, I just have one copy. This shows the whole pilot and shows the hours and how I put stuff to it. When you look at the call sheets and you see, the special effects department, I brought an example. I do the whole show for each department, what we need each day. This is something that's done during prep. So special effects on day 1, I need a working smokestack, a Con Ed cone at the police station. I show them so they know what they're bringing. Day 8, there's no effects inside a home. There's nothing special effects-wise. Day 10 at Roosevelt Island, I need a wet down. They're responsible for bringing all the water and hose it down because the director and the DP want to shine the lights into the ground and have a wet down effect. That costs money. My boss is the production manager and his boss is the producer. And those guys will say, well, Lewis, why do we want a wet down? And I'll tell them the reasons that I was just telling you. Well, if they want to have fog, it's going to look much cooler. Well, a wet down is going to cost $5,000, or maybe it's $7,000, I don't know what it is, but then they come to see if they can make it work in the budget. Their job is to try to get the director's vision across too. But when we're over budget, and every job we're over budget, they say we have to cut this or this or this. On Homeland, which I did for 3 years, we were over budget every episode. And the day before we started shooting, like clockwork, the producer would call me in his office, and the director, and say, we're $50,000 over budget. And he would say, Lewis, let me see your actions breakdown. Lewis, let me see your effects breakdown. We gotta cut this and this. We have 3 tanks, well now we gotta do it with 2. The electricians went on the tech scout the day before where we go to all these locations, and we have a night exterior, and they got 3 condors in the area to light it, well now they get 1. They gotta make it work, because each condor is $3,000, and he's gotta cut the budget down. because Showtime's paying for it, or Fox 21 is paying for it, and they're giving you so much an episode. It's like 4 million an episode, not 4,050,000. You know, so and that's where we all have to work together to make it work. So this is just an example of a document that the effects department gets and then my bosses get, which you can pass around. Anybody want to see another clip?
Sure.
All right. Are we out of time? Does anyone have any questions at this point? You had your hand up before? Or?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, how many retakes did you do to shoot the scene?
How many takes?
Yeah, like in 12 days, how, like,
And usually, I mean, I would say on a feed, everything is different. So like when George Clooney and Nicole came in at the bottom of the stairs shooting at the guy at the top at the fence,
Right.
we shot that whole thing in about 2 hours. So we did a wide over George onto the terrace at the top. Then we did close on the terrace. Each one is about 4 or 5 takes. You know, sometimes you get it in 3. Sometimes they keep getting in line. Then you get it in 8. You know, you do it until the director's happy. At a certain point, the AD might say we need to move on. You think you have it because we got to get all these other shots. Okay.
And
Thank you, sir.
UPM stands for?
What's that?
UPM?
UPM is Unit Production Manager. That's my boss, the guy that hires me.
Right under his director. Kind of a producer.
Right underneath producer, right?
I watch the show all the time, so I really shouldn't have.
Oh, do you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you like it? My wife loves it.
I'm a pretty fan.
This is chapter 7. So the groomsman, anyone ever hear of it? Anybody like baseball? I hope. Let me show you 2 baseball scenes. This is the low budget movie. Here I was the second assistant director on this one. This was $80 million, The Peacemaker. This was $2 million.
Wow.
Ed Burns directed this from Long Island, and I did this with him a few years ago. This is about he's getting married, and his bachelor party is a softball game. He wanted to hire a real team, a real softball team that was about his age. We couldn't find any that were available. When you're on low budget films, you have to kind of improvise. I happened to play baseball on Long Island in a competitive league, so the opposing team was my real team in the movie. So I brought them out. They took off work for 2 days, and I went to them on one of our games. Said, "Guys, anyone want to work in a movie for 2 weeks?" They all said, "Yeah." They loved it.
Like, oh yeah.
So hopefully you can skip the preview. When I was queuing, I was able to, and then it'll go right to the menu. The sequence you're about to see was filmed in 1 day, not 2 weeks, because we had to do it in 1 day. So you're asking about the number of takes. Ed Burns is smart enough; he knows he only has 1 day to do this. The whole movie was filmed in like 19 days.
Oof.
The groomsman was about 5 months. So it's a difference. Oh, you got it. Okay, so it's chapter 7. There you go. And this is the bit. Now, there's a lot of cursing in this. I apologize.
That's right, we're all adults here.
It's
okay.
You should hear us when you're not here.
When I was watching last night, I was like, wow. Because sometimes I go to high schools and I have to be, censor myself.
Never me and my mom fight.
I've
So.
seen that in 10 languages.
So, sorry about all the cursing. That took one day to film. So I just wanted you to see it to give you an idea. It was a shorter sequence, of course. We shot it all on City Island at a baseball field that Ed Burns picked. And one interesting thing is we couldn't afford to rent cars for the actors. There were a lot of different driving scenes. So Ed Burns went to the crew and said, who wants to volunteer their car? Thank you. I'll pay gas and tolls, when you go to work every day. So my car at the time, which was a Hyundai Elantra, was Jimbo's car. It was going rogue. So when he got to drive, I had it was good because I had to show up for work every day as a second AD, and that's how you make a low-budget film. They needed the car for a shot. He had it right there. If you did it professionally, like on the Peacemaker, you're driving those Range Rovers around or those Suburbans, you're paying a lot of money, $120 a day, but they have the money to do it. Okay, so the last thing I'm going to show you guys. You have any questions now? So it was there was a lot of Steadicam work in that. The whole fight was one camera. We had two cameras half the time, but one camera the other half, because that's what we could afford.
When did they get a chance to rehearse that?
You generally rehearse it on the day. What you do on a lot of low budget films, if the actors agree to it, because there's not as much rehearsal time, is you bring them in for a cast read through before you start filming, usually about 4 days before you start filming. And then the last 3 days, there's rehearsal time with the director, which is just in a room like this. And the 5 of them will sit around a table and rehearse those scenes. And that's something else the AD does. You'll schedule rehearsal times where the actors that aren't needed don't come during those times, and they talk about the scene, how they're going to play it, so that when you get onto the field, you don't have 80 people standing around waiting for them to figure out how they're going to perform it. And that's a very good point, because if you don't have the rehearsal time, you're waiting on the cast sometimes. And it doesn't matter how well they know their lines if they haven't had a chance to interact with each other.
I have a question. If he
Yeah.
paid $2 million to have that made,
Yeah.
what was his return?
Well,
Did he get his investment out of it?
I think he broke even. I will say this is the one film, as an assistant director, we get residuals from films that we work on when you're a first AD or a second AD. This is the one film I never saw a penny of because it was a French-backed company and they claimed bankruptcy. So the DGA, the Directors Guild, the union I belong to, kind of went after them. So as far as Ed, he may have only gotten his salary back. It was favored nations, which means every actor gets the same thing. On a movie like The Peacemaker, George Clooney and Nicole Kidman get star trailers, and then the other actors probably get what they call two bangers, where you put 2 people in a trailer, or 3, put 3 actors in one trailer, or a honey wagon where you put 8. On The Groomsmen, there was 1 honey wagon, they all got one little room. Because we couldn't afford star trailers.
Oh, Lewis is also part of the Directors Guild, right?
Yeah, so the Directors Guild of America is the guild you would belong to if you're a director or an assistant director, or in New York, a location manager. Any questions about the call sheets? Okay, do we have time for one more?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so this is Ugly Betty. Anyone remember that show?
Yeah.
All right, so this is the show that shot 2 years in New York, 2 years in LA, and then came to New York. And I did all of season 3 when it came to New York. This is the second last episode. Thank you. It's episode 23. It's called Curveball.
So did they give you these DVDs because you worked on the show, or did you buy them? Do you buy them to show for your classes and stuff like that?
This one I got for free. They gave me this. Ugly Betty. These 2 I bought actually. Yeah, I bought the other 2.
And then he lends them out
They're
and
kinda
nobody
cheap.
gives them back.
And then I wanted to show you the
Homeland.
Homeland. I had 2 or 3 copies of it, and I go to get them last night to prepare for this, and they're all out. And I realized I lent them out like a year ago, and my friends don't give them back. So I'm sitting there, and I wasn't able to. I would have shown you some of those clips. So Ugly Betty. This was kind of a highlight in my career, which was really cool about this. If you're a Met fan, anyone a Met fan here? All right, we filmed at Citi Field the first week that Citi Field opened.
Wow.
They opened on a Monday, their first game of the season. We filmed there on a Friday. They allowed us. The logistics of getting in there were phenomenal. I probably had to go to Citi Field with the production manager and the producer at least 7 times, maybe 8 times, have meetings in order to do what you're about to see, the sequence you're about to see. Again, this was one day. This was 5 cameras. I was in charge of 3 of them. No, I was in charge of 4 of them. And the producer took the 5th one to get what we call kind of second unit shots on his own, interstitial shots. If you go to episode selection,
Gorgeous
Curveball,
little
that's
Betty,
it.
man.
and then it's about 22 minutes into the episode. Anybody watch Ugly Betty when it was on?
I only did a
Yeah?
little bit.
Yeah.
She's not even ugly. Like, why?
I'm a
what?
TV junkie, I try to
She
consume
wasn't
as much
that
TV
ugly,
shows as I
yeah,
can.
She wasn't ugly at all, really. Like, she just had braces. Like,
and all that, you know.
man, if you have braces, you're ugly. I didn't know.
Yeah, so if you just go back to this sequence, right, at the beginning. So you guys may have seen this, so yeah, that's good. We were able to film in City Field during a live game, you know, primetime show. So that was interesting. Anyone have any questions? Anybody want to be an AD now?
I mean,
Yeah.
I would
Everybody.
I would try
Everybody.
anything, so I would try.
If you have access to the internet, I can show you the show that I'm going to go on to. If you want to go to YouTube and just type in Gotham, it's a 2-minute trailer.
Wait,
Yes.
that show?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
Gotham.
look,
Yeah,
oh,
that one.
Wait,
Yeah.
what?
No, I heard.
I didn't know, we didn't
I heard
start
that
it.
they're using
I
the
saw
little
that.
kid from
David popped
the
up.
Batman
here.
movies, like that played Bruce Wayne in the show.
That show?
Dark Knight?
No.
What?
Yeah, it's about the beginnings of Batman. Yeah. Oh, have you seen the trailer already? Do you want to see it? Or?
Yeah.
You see-
I love
Heard of it.
TV
Who
so
are
much.
you?
So they filmed the pilot. I had nothing to do with the pilot, but I got hired about 2 weeks ago to be one of the 2 first ADs. This will be a 9-day show. They told me.
Sorry, you say you got hired from your reputation, somebody picked you up, or?
Well, I had to go in and interview.
Oh, you had an interview.
I had an interview. It was an hour-and-a-half interview with the UPM, who I do know, and his boss, the line producer, who I never met before. So his name is Scott. The UPM is Tom. They ask me a whole bunch of questions, and then what they do is they call the producers of these shows and say, "What's Lewis like?" You know, we see that he has Ugly Betty on his resume. So your reputation precedes you in a way, and hopefully it's a good one.
Okay, well, obviously it
He is a
is.
really
What-
good resume.
Yeah, obviously.
Where was this filmed majoritively? The new Gotham.
Gotham, the pilot was all in New York.
Cool. That's awesome.
Yeah,
That is awesome.
and
And-
this will
and the
be at
show's
Steiner
staying in
Studios,
New York,
which is in
yeah?
Brooklyn. Huh?
Show staying in New York, yeah.
Staying in New York.
Cool.
Got picked up by Fox for 15 episodes. I'm going to film till Christmas. And by Thanksgiving, they'll look at the ratings, so all of you will watch it.
Yes.
And they'll say if the ratings are good, they'll pick up what's called the back 9. And after Christmas, we'll do 9 more. You can play it. I don't know if it... Yeah, and hopefully it'll, you know, go a number of years.
Hopefully.
I see it going down. Sometimes I think this place is cursed.
Everything.
All before. And I asked in my interview, how come, where's the Joker? And they said, we're saving the Joker. So, maybe, I don't know if in this show, the Joker killed Bruce Wayne's parents, or in the first movie he did.
Right, that's with the devil in the moonlight.
That's
right?
right, they killed him. That's right, so maybe, was
That's
that
so
him?
cool.
They're gonna maybe save it for the end of the season, I think it's kinda cool.
It's TV, David, don't worry.
I watched Castle.
Castle's awesome.
Castle's awesome. I watched Castle.
Well, I didn't do any of that.
No, I mean, just in general. you
Yeah, we
find
use a
that-
lot of green screen. Well, Homeland did a bunch of green
I'm
screen.
gonna watch
You
Perception.
know, in the movies, Ugly Betty, we did green screen. We would do green screen often for some visual effect work.
Okay.
Not in the Groomsmen at all, couldn't
Yeah,
afford it.
it's, yeah. It's on Hulu.
Yeah,
Is there
The
Homeland there?
Americans?
Is there something in Homeland that she's asking me?
if you're able to get, I wanted to show you guys was the finale of season 1. But unfortunately,
You gotta be
we didn't
Hulu.
get returned.
Maybe you have to download it, but
You gotta be in
podcast.
Hulu for something.
Second to last episode of season 1 was my favorite episode of that. Well, I think it's like the best one. It's quite
Yeah, no, like, is there a specific one you want me to look up?
The season
Just
1
the-
finale?
Because they do behind the scenes as well.
Oh, unless you have something, yeah.
No,
you
no,
don't.
go ahead.
I don't know.
They
You said
have-
you saw
there's-
something.
Yeah, there's a couple of good ones we have Gordon speaking.
Don't show the second season.
Yeah, I'm behind too.
That's it, Marine
I'm
1.
behind too.
I saw the finale.
Yeah, that's the finale.
Michael, Claire.
So let me tell you a quick story as far as career. I was out of work at the time. You know, I'm freelancing, and I interviewed for a movie called Roadie as a second AD by a first AD.
Oh, you can watch it on Amazon Instant Video.
And Michael Cuesta was the director of that movie, which was about $400,000. A movie called Roadie, which you can
Yeah,
rent
you
and
have to buy
get.
it.
And
So no.
I turned it down. The first AD, I felt, he did a lot of commercials, and he worked with Michael Cuesta, who does commercials as well. I just felt he was not experienced enough, and I was going to be doing his job, so I said no, and it didn't pay very much. And that was just a career decision. About 2 weeks later, I got a call from the producer saying, would you be interested in interviewing for the first AD, because Michael was not comfortable with this guy. He didn't know, he didn't have the experience to work on a feature. So I went back and interviewed, and he hired me as his first AD, and he gave me producer credit, which was for me very cool.
Oh,
And it was called Roadie, and it didn't really go anywhere, but we made it in 15 days or 19 days, something like that. It was with Ron Eldar, and there's Michael Cuesta, so he hired me. And he went and did Homeland, and he brought me down to Charlotte. So sometimes you work on these independent, low-budget things that pays off. He brought me down to Charlotte, which turned into a 3-year thing, and then he hired me for the pilot of Elementary, too. So Babylon Fields is something he called me for, but I was doing the Americans. I wasn't available. Unfortunately, it didn't get picked up. So that's his, yeah, he's got quite a resume. That's his,
Dexter. Everybody loves Dexter.
yeah.
I don't.
He's a good, and he lives
You're not
in
everybody,
London.
Tyler.
That Mr.
Oh, really?
Dexter.
Michael Cuesta, yeah.
Oh, Michael.
He did LIE.
Yeah, the director.
Yeah, let me see. Let me see.
This is him right here. Nice guy.
I want to see if I see him.
Here in the street, bro.
I see him, maybe I see him on.
I'm in Huntington all the time.
I drive
So
by.
same in Starbucks.
What's that?
I'm in Huntington all the time.
Are
I'll
you?
stalk him.
So that's it. That concludes my presentation. How we do. Thank you. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask.
You're freelancing, so that means you've got to keep your eye on what? Publications or the phone, your email, somebody's calling you?
Certainly email. Everywhere. I mean, when I started out, I was a regular subscriber to the Hollywood Reporter. Mandy.com. There were a whole bunch of those things where you look for any job you can get, and then as your career progresses and you become more well known, you get calls. I didn't even know about Gotham. I got a call for it. I submitted my resume to Tom for a show he did called Hostages, which he'd already been staffed. And I did a pilot anyway called Dead Boss. But then he remembered that I submitted for Hostages, which didn't get picked up, and he said, but I did something called Gotham right after Hostages. Would you be interested in interviewing? Because he had my resume from another show. I said, sure. And I went in, and this is actually one of the longer interviews I had where they had done a lot of homework on me by calling previous jobs. And halfway through the interview, they offered me the assignment, which was cool. I wasn't really prepared to take it either. I said I needed a day or two because I was interviewing for other jobs. And then I found out how high profile it was and what cool, and I hadn't even seen, the pilot, and then they let me watch it, and I said, okay, I'd like to do it.
So what advice you have for these young people, graduates and students who are interested?
Yeah. So are you all graduating this coming May or June? Are you all seniors?
Many of them are on the way out.
Yeah.
Nice. And how many want to continue in film production? Working on the set? And do we know in any capacity, or are you trying to?
Yeah, in any capacity for the
Yeah. What do you want to do?
Oh, I'm trying to figure it out now.
Trying to figure it
that's
out.
what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I would just try anything.
Right. Well, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a director, and you should. I mean, I do. Why not? That's a creative. That's what we all aspire to, or a producer. But the reality is, once you graduate and you want to find a job and you got to pay your cell phone bill or your rent, you got to get a job, you got to get to work. Being a production assistant is something that's really hard work. That's how I started, and it pays the rent and it allows you to grow and become part of the the film community, the production department.
Something you are a member of the Directors Guild as a PA.
As an assistant director, as a
No,
first
as a
AD.
production assistant.
Production assistants are not.
You don't have to.
When you work on a union film, the production assistant is the only member that can work on a union film and be not union. Every other, like if you go to the camera department, every single one of those people are in the camera union, which is local 600. You go to the grips or the electrics, they're all in local 52. You can't be a production assistant. But the Directors Guild allows production assistant to work for the assistant directors. And honestly, part of the reason for that is our rate of pay is a lot higher than what the grips or electrics or camera people earn. Not extremely, but more. That the producers are not going to want to hire 8 or 9 assistant directors. They give us flack for it. They hire 3. That's our minimum staffing requirement. And then everyone under there's a first AD, which is what I am, a second AD, which is what I used to be, and a second AD, which is kind of like a third, but they call it the second. And beneath him are the non-union people. If you're interested in being on the set, there's also something called the training program, which you can look into. It's the Directors Guild of America Producer Training Program, and it's very competitive, and every January a test is given in New York City. About 300, 400 people take it, and about 5 people make it. And those 5 or 6 people get assigned to sets. They get assigned to me for 6 months on the duration of the show. And they learn how to assist the second AD, and the second they work on set with me, and they learn how to do call sheets. It's a 2-year program. At the end of 2 years, the training program says you can now be an AD. I took the test twice. I failed it both times. By the time I took it the second time, I was already a PA doing it the other route, earning what you have to earn 600 days. You get 600 days, you collect 600 call sheets, and 600 pay stubs, and 600. Not crew list, but crew list from your job, which amount is 600 days. And production reports, which is another document, looks like this. You put them in a book, and you submit them to the Directors Guild. And it's a whole process. So if it's something you want to do when you graduate here, start saving. You'll get these every day. You'll get a call sheet, and on the back, under the production department, you'll see my name here as first AD. Will be your name under the PAs. And you save them. And I wish someone told me this, because when I was on JFK, that first film I did, I didn't know. I didn't know about this till A Bronx Tale. And I was scrambling 5 movies back to find those call sheets to prove that I worked on them. And so that's, if you want to be a PA, that's what you do. You save 600 of these. When you get over that, you can submit them with your pay stubs, your production reports, your crew list, and your call sheets.
600 hours.
Days.
600 days.
You need 600 days to get to qualify to join the Directors Guild. And then you submit them, and then you get voted in. They say, okay, this John Smith has 600 of these. I submitted when I had like 650. So Louis Guerra submitted 650, and he's got everything in order, his paperwork's in order. And then you give a letter to 3 people who would sponsor you. And they say, okay, I know Louis, he's been a PA for me on 4 movies now, he should be in the DGA. And then that goes to the guild, and then you get voted on by what's called a council. And then once you get voted, then you get a call, say, hey, welcome to the guild. Come to our next meeting. And then you can look for work as an AD.
So how much you get paid for that, you said during the training period?
The trainees are kind of paid a little bit more than a PA. It comes out to about $10 an hour. But you're working, your day is like, you're working 14, 15 hours a day. And you get overtime after 8. So they're making about 175 a day, what it comes out to. A PA gets, like for Gotham, anyone know what a PA earns? When I'm gonna hire 5 PAs, that's my core staff of 5. They're gonna get $130 a day for 12 hours. Their day is about 14 to 15 hours. So they start at 7, they'll end at about 9:30 p.m. So after 7, they'll get time and a half. So they get about 160 a day. And it's definitely a training ground. It's tiring, it's hard. You go home, you eat dinner, you go to bed. So what I try to do is give them breaks. If I'm doing a big scene, like on The Peacemaker, I need everyone, right? Or in in the city field. But if you're down to 2 people in a room and it's the last scene and the scene takes 2.5 hours, I'll try to let 2 of my PAs go home early, give them a break, then they come in first the next day. You know, it's called, I think it's, you know, good management. They're not just standing outside the door waiting for 2.5 hours, you know, while we film a little scene. Any other questions?
This might be a location department question, but in comparison from Peacemaker and trying to film around the UN, and comparing that to City Field, which one was more difficult in terms of getting the access?
Oh, wow. Well, I will say that for the Peacemaker, it was pre-9/11, so things were a lot easier.
Okay.
Filming was a lot easier. Now it's a lot, I mean, now we're all used to it. Now it's extremely difficult to get anything done.
Mm-hmm.
But there are tax incentives in New York which promote filming, so there's so much more of it. There are 29 TV shows that are shooting in New York,
Mm-hmm.
Gotham being one of them. That's a lot of shows. So getting permission to do things takes a lot more time, but it is the locations department that has to deal with that element of it. For me personally, it was definitely the City Field one because I was the first AD on this. On the Peacemaker, I was a production assistant.
Okay.
So I was just there for the shooting. But here I had to prepare the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
So preparing it meant going back and meeting with different boards, getting to the next level. And so it was myself, the location manager, and the final meeting was myself, the location manager, and the UPM, the 3 of us, going and sitting across a table like this with the executives of City Field with a document like this, spelling out hour by hour where we're going to be and where my crew is going to be. I had 25 production assistants. I went and had 25 very bright yellow t-shirts made that said PA on it because we didn't know half the crew. And there was going to be so many people there that I had made them all wear it. So if anyone had a problem, they went to one of those people and they asked a question. The PA didn't know. He got on the walkie and he asked me, so I could tell him exactly what was going on, where we were going to be. And I had five ADs. So it was my regular staff was 3. I had another 2 beneath on that, and I assigned them to cameras. Our director of photography on that show was well known for disappearing, walking around. I could never roll without his permission, otherwise he could freak out.
Mm-hmm.
So I hired one PA that was assigned to him. I said, "You don't leave his side. Do not leave his side. If he goes to the bathroom, you go in the stall with him.
Oh my God.
That is your job." And that's what I told him, and it worked beautifully. I could say right now, "Where is Will? Where is Will?" And he would answer me, "We're at this camera, that camera." I say, "Well, tell him I'm ready to roll an A. Can I roll?" And it worked beautifully. And that's how you had to do it.
Wow.
So a lot of what we do is putting out fires before they start.
Mm-hmm.
Being organized, you're very organized.
Yeah, you have to be organized. Because otherwise, if you're not, the director's like, why aren't we shooting? He's looking at me. And a lot of times what directors do, they'll go rehearse a scene, and then they come sit behind the monitor, and they just sit in their chair and they wait. Because it's my job to say roll sound. You know, because I roll when we're ready. And then it's their job to say action. They say action and cut, but they don't roll until I tell them they can.
So this Directors Guild is a good training, is a good spot for these people to investigate.
If they want to be in the production department. If you guys want to be, being an assistant director does not lead to being a director. You need to know that. I wish I knew that. You know, but it could lead to it. Being a director is a different animal in itself. And there are many ways to do it, and none of them are easy. Being a production assistant does lead to being an assistant director if you're good enough. Being a production assistant leads to getting into the Directors Guild, and the Directors Guild has many perks and benefits to it, such as, you know, things you want to think about in your life, pension and health plans, you know, vacation time, all that stuff that you want to give you quality of life. You don't get that as a PA, but you get that as an AD. Now there are many PAs that don't get into the Directors Guild or choose not to because they want to work on independent films that are not DGA, and that's non-union, and you can do that, and I did that for a long time, but I finally said, you know, I was a first AD very early on in my career in non-union productions that were $1 million and under, and having a good time and making them, and you have a lot of creative freedom because there's no studio hovering over you. But eventually I said, you know, I want to get married, I want to have a family, and you want to be able to put food on the table, and that's, to me, it just wasn't cutting it. So I had to join the DGA, but then I had to start at the bottom again as a second, because no one's just going to hire you right away. But yes, it's a good training program, to answer your question. If that's something you guys aspire to, then you should look into, you can Google it, dga.org, or just go online and look it up and try to get an understanding of what it is. They have a public section and a members only section. And then if you want to take the training test, you apply, start applying September, October, take it in January, and you can go to the mayor's.
What's on that test? Do you remember?
Yeah, it's like an SAT. It's given by a panel of psychologists. It's not, has nothing to do with film. I remember there's a speed math question of 100 questions, and it's like 64 plus 19, but it's written horizontally, not vertically, so you can't like add the numbers. It's all written horizontally, and you have 1 minute to do 100. And it's all about pressure. How many can you do in a minute, and how many can you get right? So you're better if you'll do 35 and get them all right than if you do 70 and you get half wrong. And then there are a lot of logistic questions. I remember one question being, you live on Long Island, you work at a store in Manhattan, it's a Sunday, you're in charge of opening the store at 7 in the morning, or 8 in the morning, and your boss gave you explicit instructions not to bother him that day. You get to the store, you realize you left your keys to the store at home. Do you A, break the window, B, break the window to open the door, B, go home, get the key, come back and open the store 3 hours late, C, call a locksmith, which will cost $300, or D, wake your boss up, bother him, and he lives a block away? What's the right answer? So all of these are tied into what's the right answer on a set. What do you do?
So what is the right answer?
Well, there is none. I mean, any of them can be the right answer, but it's how you, and what they do is they ask the same question in a different way 15 questions later.
Right.
Similar but different to see if you're being consistent. You know, what I did was call the locksmith. That's what I called. I
The
didn't
300 came out of you.
Well, well, that comes later on. You have to pay it. Yeah, it comes out of my pay, right? Or does he choose to pay it? I didn't want to break the window and cause damage. I didn't want to open the store late. You know, but what's the right answer? Another question they ask is, you're at a party. Do you prefer A, to be the life of the party, tell all the jokes, everyone's centering you? B, somewhere in the middle of A and C being stand back and watch and observe. And they don't want you to answer B too much. They want A or C, and they say that.
I would go with A, actually.
You go with what?
I go with A.
A, you want to be the life of the party.
Well,
But they might say,
am.
oh, that means you want to be an actor. You want to be a performer.
Yeah, you want to be in front of it.
And this is the assistant director training program. They don't want that.
They-
But C might mean, oh, you're not taking the lead. You're not taking charge.
I thought they would ask technical questions.
Yeah,
you know
no.
what I mean, like?
Nothing. And then what happens is so I didn't even get past that one. I didn't even get past the written. There's 600 people.
other guilds?
Then they narrow that down to the top 80, and they bring in those 80 people for the first round of interviews, and then the second round of interviews is 20, and from the 20 they pick 5 or 6. That's how they vote these
I'm
down.
going on Jeopardy.
That's what it is.
And they ask you the same questions in the interview?
Well, I didn't get that far. But I know people, and the interview board is made up of 5 or 6 ADs and 5 or 6 trustees of the plan, which are producer types of the studios that fund the plan. And those 12 people try to pick the best 5 or 6 trainees, and some of them are excellent, and they've gone on to become big ADs and directors, and some of them just fizzled down, they never made it, so it's kind of interesting.
It's a challenging
Yeah,
environment, right?
it's a challenging environment, yeah. And it's all about, it's a pressure cooker, and it's a lot of fun, and when you make a day and you do the day and you've done something like I did, it's really rewarding, like the Ugly Betty thing. But there are disasters too. Part of my expectation is that my team is on point, we know what we're doing, but I also expect the actors to be ready. And some people who are actors take their job as a joke, and they're not prepared. And when you have a scene that's 5 pages long and you have an actor who doesn't know his lines, and you have 2.5 hours to shoot it, and they're not prepared, that 2.5 hours can turn into 5 hours or 6 hours. And I've seen actors lose their jobs that get recast because they're just not prepared.
How would the Homeland crew?
Excellent. And you will never see that, in Homeland, you work with Manny Patinkin, who's got these long things of dialogue. He is super prepared. He's so anal and so hard on himself. He's so ready. And Claire Danes, they have these long things. They know they got to be on point. Actors don't work every day like ADs, so they're expected to be working at home, learning their lines the next day.
Do they
And part of
tape
my
them-
job is-
Do they tape them and stick them on furniture and stuff like that, in case they forget?
What's that?
Do they tape them on furniture?
Sometimes. I mean, Manny Patinkin has a script, and he has like every note you can imagine. He's like every page is filled with scribble about how he's going to perform, and he takes the script with him to set. And he hides it in a drawer, or I'll hold it for him during a scene, and if he wants to refer to it during takes, he does. So, some people are very method that way.
Radio was on Criminal Minds?
Maybe it's making stuff.
I remember remember a TV show called Lights Out. It was a boxing show for FX. It lasted one season. We did a scene with this actress. She played Miss Teschmacher from Superman 2, or Superman, the movie, which was Lex Luthor's girlfriend. Well, she, can't remember her name, but she had taken a lot of controlled substances in her time. And I'm serious, she lost a lot of brain cells. They hired her. She could not remember her lines, and she told me that when she was hired. So we literally, there was a scene in the kitchen where she was putting away dishes, going to the dishwasher, to the sink, to the cupboard, where the other cupboard where the dishes were, and the cupboard where the salt and pepper shakers were. And we had to plan out how she was going to do her lines, and at each point we did exactly what you just said. We took that portion of lines and taped them down in the kitchen sink, in the cupboard, inside the drawer, so she could say the next line, because she could not do it. I've never had to hire a teleprompter guy for someone who didn't know their lines, like that. For long monologues, maybe. She said, I'm not going to learn it, I'll never remember. So,
Woof.
yeah,
Which
very
is
interesting.
your favorite that you've worked on?
My favorite, wow, I had a great time in the Groomsmen, because it was so run and gun. I was a second AD on that. This was very logistical. I mean, my favorite, I happen to love doing the Americans, season 2 this year. That was also a logistical nightmare, because we had such a cold weather, with the snow and all.
Yeah, the favorite's gonna be the next one.
Who knew Gotham? I mean, I loved working with Kerry Russell and Matt
Pretty
Reeves.
cool.
They were truly great performers. They were just friendly and fun to be on set with. Doing that show was hard. I think I have to think about that. They're all hard, but they all have their perks. So, yeah.
So you're saying that being an AD is not necessarily a career path into being a director? What might be?
It is not. Being an AD leads to being a UPM, unit production manager, and then a producer. But like myself, I'm trying to direct, so you ask for those opportunities to do an episode, and then they consider you. But for me, that hasn't happened yet. To be a director, there are many things you can do, and one is, the easiest thing is I can say, just go out and direct. And then, well, how do you do that? You have to, if you have money, you can direct your own short film. You make a short film and you get it in these competitions, in filmmaking competitions. You get notoriety. You make a couple of them. Now, the secretary at the Directors Guild of America did that. She's a secretary there to the council, and she is now leaving her job because she got picked up. She got her film into Sundance. She took off 4 months a year ago to make this film. They let her take off. She came back to work, went to Sundance, and it was so good that she's now pursuing her career as a director. She wants to direct movies, so she got some offer to make it into a feature. So it does happen, and she pulled all her favors and all her resources, to make it happen. Another way is to write. You can write a screenplay, and if your screenplay is really good and it gets financing, someone says, well, I want to pay you $2 million. You can say, well, you know what, pay me $1 million, but let me direct it. You kind of negotiate that way. So that's something else I try to do. And then you could just get lucky. You could know someone. Cloverfield, where I was an AD on, the guy that directed that was best friends. I think he was best friends and grew up with J.J. Abrams. And J.J. Abrams let him do it. Became a director in his own right. Getting experience. We have to give him the opportunity. So and actors. If you're an actor, like on season 2 of The Americans, Noah Emmerich is doing an episode next year. But he can pull that kind of power. The guy plays Stan
He was
Beeman.
very involved in the, he was.
Well, he's an actor. He plays Stan Beeman.
Right, but how did he was just very involved on set?
No, he said, I want to direct season 3. But because he's an actor and they need him, he can negotiate that kind of thing. He did come with us on some scouts last year, sat in on some concept meetings and production meetings to try to...
Is he capable?
Well, I guess we'll see. It'll be his first time. He'll have the support that he needs. He'll have the DP and the AD and everything. I won't be doing the Americans this year because of Gotham. So, I would love to AD for him. See what he's like as a director. Because he has to direct himself, too. One of my favorite, I did a movie called I Hate Valentine's Day which was a low-budget film that Nia Vardalos
Sounds
directed.
well budgeted.
That's a really cute movie.
Did you see a cute
Yeah.
movie? That was about $3.5 million.
Yeah, actually.
From My Big Fat Greek Wedding, the actress from there, she directed and acted in this. And I was her AD, and that was a lot of fun doing that. And on these independents, you kind of get carte blanche in terms of how you do things. Here, you have like constant supervision on the bigger stuff, you know. They want to know how you're spending their money.
Ka-ching.
Yeah. But,
I have another question. I wasn't actually watching, but I was flipping through and I saw Seinfeld was on last night. And I'm thinking, you know, these have been on for decades over and over again. And I was thinking about the residual structure, and you had mentioned residuals. So I'm wondering how that works. Can people be bought out of their residuals? Who gets residuals? In the case of an AD or a director or something, is that like every DVD that gets sold, they get 1 cent? Is that a
Right.
significant source of a revenue stream, or is it just?
it's,
anything about
you know, well, we work in a freelance industry, so residuals are seen by us as a revenue stream to support us when we're not working. You know, that's the argument that we make, let's say, when we're in negotiations for people who try to take residuals away from us. The people that get them are the directors, the unit production manager, the first AD, and the second AD. And the actors, the producers, and the writers. Now, it's been a long bone of contention. Directors of photography do not get them. Production designers do not get them. So I've often been given a lot of flack by those people, saying, "Oh, so you're gonna make. I'm lighting this, and you're gonna make money on this for the rest of your life." You know, I said, "Well, then don't come be an AD if you don't want to be a DP." You know, they make significantly more than I do on the set. You know, a DP will make more than an AD, and they should, for what their job responsibility is. But residuals, I'll get residuals for movies in its second run, which means when a movie goes to the theater, the director will get residuals based on the earnings, a percentage of how that movie does. The AD gets it when it goes to DVD or TV. It's called secondary markets. If a film is made for DVD, then the AD will get it, I think, once it's run after a month. There's a lot of different formulas. The percentage is small. Ugly Betty, I'll get a residual check for 1 episode for 29 cents.
Really?
You know, but I'll still get them.
Yeah, that's cool.
Law and Order, I got one for a penny a month ago. But Homeland, I got a significant one. You know, it was for season 1. It was a lot of money for season 1, so that was good. You know, it was about $20,000. So that was nice for season 1, and it was 1 check for 1 quarter. So the next quarter will be significantly less, but it'll come. They pay it quarterly, all of these studios. So that's another perk. You're right. If you get to the DGA and you get to that point, you can earn these. I did a movie called The Pink Panther 2, which is a comedy with Steve Martin, which I thought was pretty awful. But the residual is nice. It's a kid's movie, I guess, in a lot of ways. And people go and buy these. I'm like, who is watching this? Years later, who goes and gets, I want to rent The Pink Panther 2?
Steve Martin, man. I don't know.
You know,
Steve Martin did it himself. He's like, oh, yeah.
maybe.
Kids like it. People with kids always buy DVDs
Steve Martin
because
buys
the
it
kids
for
watch
his
them
screen.
over and over and over and over.
I guess
again.
so.
Yeah.
I can't believe it.
My step siblings, they buy DVDs for their kids all the time, and I was sitting with my nephew the other day, and he was on his like 6th time watching Toy Story that day.
Oh my God! I was
Yeah.
like, who's watching this stuff? So,
And that's what kids do.
and now with electronic streaming and downloads, there's a way to when you subscribe and download, there's a percentage of that. And the director gets a lot more, of course.
Well, like with a lot of smaller budget movies are going straight to on demand and going straight to on demand.
Yes, right.
So the theater release and the on demand release are the same day. So
That's right.
how does that work for someone like you, where you're supposed to be getting second run residuals? When is it considered, when it's on demand, is it considered second
That
run?
would probably be second run. That's my guess. I don't know, to be honest with you. The theater, I know they wouldn't get, but the DVD or the electronics, the ESC streaming you'd get, yeah. And then there might be a window. It is in the contract. I mean, there might be a window of a month that after a month, then the AD gets cut of it, or 14 days.
Interesting.
Yeah. And that's all, negotiated. Anything else, guys?
So I just finished reading, well, I actually haven't finished reading it, but I started reading Sidney Lumet's book about being a director.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he was talking about, which I found really interesting, is that his job as a director, and I'm wondering in your case as well, starts well before the movie starts or the TV show starts.
Yes.
And so basically, as soon as there's somewhat of an okay script in hand or an okay project in hand, you're hitting the ground. And is that the case with your job as well?
Yeah, yes, not as early as a director. So for example, on Gotham, the director, I'm supposed to start June 23rd. We start shooting July 2nd. That gives me 8 days to prep the first episode of the season, which when you're crewing up for the first time is not nearly enough time. So I told the producer I need 1 more week. And he said, let's see where the director starts, because if he may come in the 16th because he wants more time, but he'll want his AD with him, you know, because he's not going to want to say stuff then it doesn't get done. He needs someone to assist him. And I hope he does come in early because I need that time to start, to prepare, to hit the ground. So once there's a script available, which we don't have yet for that episode 2, then we'll want to get in on the ground as much as we can, but with the knowledge that that script is going to keep changing, because the writers will constantly want to make it better and better. They'll want to keep revising pages, which happens a lot in any show. And on a movie, the director will usually start usually a whole month before the AD. And the reason for that is they're also designing the sets. On a TV show, the sets are already built, but they're designing sets for the first time, so they're going to be consulting with the production designer, who's got to start early because he's got to get them built, got to get the materials, and find the stages to build them. So that's stuff that has to happen, but that doesn't require me yet.
What is, like, for a TV show, what is a normal day for you?
For shooting, a normal day, you mean length of day?
Or yeah, like preparing for a show or preparing to shoot a show, either.
A normal day for me is about 12 hours. Starts about 8:30 in the morning on a prep day when I'm not shooting. And a normal day will be spending 3 or 4 of the 5 hours scouting in a van with the director, the production designer, the line producer, location manager, and me. And during that 5 hours, we'll look at the script, and the location manager will have gone ahead of us days before, and he'll found like the 3 restaurants that we're looking at that are in the script, or the 2 hotel rooms, you know what I mean, or the walk and talk on the sidewalk. And we'll go look at them, and we might not make decisions, and I'll have my little iPhone, and I'll take pictures of everything, and I'll download them to my computer that night, and just retain them, and then the director will say, do you remember that hotel we looked at? Which one was that? And I'll pull it up. I'll say, well, we looked at 3. Oh yeah, the second one is the one I want. And then I'll go to the location manager. So we'll spend 5 hours scouting and another 4 or 5 hours in meetings. The way I didn't even talk about is I have to organize department head meetings. So I go through the whole script with the hair and makeup department. It takes about 2 hours. Then I do it again with the wardrobe department. Then I do it again with special effects if there are special effects in there, or stunts, and we talk about how we're going to accomplish that. Stunts needs rehearsals. So if I have the stunt planned on day 5, I might need to rehearse it on day 2 and videotape it so the director can look at it on day 3 of filming, make comments, so they can adjust it on day 4 so we're ready to shoot it on day 5. Stuff like that. So I'll set up department head meetings. And I probably have 1 or 2 department head meetings a day. Prepping a show, it takes about 8 days. Day 7 is our tech scout normally, which means I bring all the department heads in a people mover or in 3 vans, and we go to every location. We discuss the time we're going to shoot it and what's required and how the director wants to shoot it. And I run that. I run the tech scout. And then the next day is a production meeting, and we go through all the script at a table. We sit down with all the department heads, and I'll sit here with the director, and I'll go in continuity order. And I'll say, scene 1, we're in a room with 2 people, and they're drinking glasses of wine. Easy enough, 2 people. Oh, but then one of the glasses of wine is going to explode because there's a bomb under the desk. You know, so we make sure that the bomb is ready, the special effects is there, and that we have a stunt double for them, so that they don't get hurt for that one explosion shot. You know, scene 2, and you go through every scene like that. So that's part of my day. So we have department head meetings, we have scouting, we have, and then when I'm alone, hopefully, usually at the end of the night, what I do is I have to plan the next day's prep. So we do a little prep schedule, which is a sheet of paper, and this is what the order of events is the next day. And then I have a alone time putting all my notes from the day on the computer in the schedule. And then if I get new pages, I want to keep them updated. Unfortunately, a lot of what I do to catch up has to be done on the weekends, because it's a lot of your day is taken up.
The script changes, sometimes the writers change something, and at the last minute.
Yeah, and it's very frustrating because they're very highly paid, and I always feel like they're not on their game. Like they're lazy sometimes, and they wait to the last second. You know, you tell them day 3, we have to change this because it's not going to happen, and they don't do it till day 7. Now you're ready to start shooting, and they, oh yeah, I'll change it, but then it affects everything else that they didn't think of. And sometimes they're great. Sometimes.
When you told me about the meeting with the department heads, can you say what the departments are?
Yes, and you can look at it right on the back. So we will have, I'll have department head meetings early in the prep period, early in those 8 days with hair and makeup. It'll be the hair and the makeup person, me and the director. And we'll sit there and go through the script. So on a show like Gotham, I imagine there might be some big things, you know, hair and makeup things going on with these characters, I'm guessing. Then we'll do it again with wardrobe. I'll do it with props, go through the whole script with props. Those are 3 separate meetings right there. If effects are present, we'll bring in an effects person and do it again with the effects. Sometimes effects is related to props, so they'll be part of it. And then stunts, that's the 5th one. So during the course of the prep, we'll have those 5 meetings. In addition to that, we're scouting, and then we have our concept meeting is usually, I guess I should say this in order, I'm sorry. Day 1, we have a concept meeting. We go through the script with all the department heads in one room, and the producer runs that, and then I'll stop and ask questions. So the concept meeting is just to get the general idea of the direction the script is going to take. It says interior fine restaurant. Okay, so I'll say, well, stop. Is this a high-end restaurant? Is it a Russian? Is it Italian? What do we want? What does the location manager want to be looking for? And the director goes, well, I imagine an Italian restaurant. And the writer goes, oh, really? Oh, I thought it was going to be something else, you know. And then they'll argue for a few minutes, and then they'll have an agreement. The location manager will write notes, and then he'll know what to go scout for. And then we'll go on. And we do that through the whole script. That's our concept meeting. And that's usually in the first half of the morning on day 1 of prep. And then we'll go out, and we'll scout that afternoon. And then day 2, 3, and 4, I'll start those department head meetings. So they know they got to read those scripts, because they have to come up with the questions. And we're scouting and scheduling. And then toward the end of the schedule, then you have day 5 and 6. There might be a rehearsal in there, a stunt rehearsal, something big is happening on it, and there's more scouting. Some of the scouting takes the whole day. And then you have your tech scout, which always takes 12 hours. You know, it takes a whole day to go to all these locations in and around Manhattan. And then day 8, you have your production meeting and any kind of final wrap-up meeting. Sometimes I have an inter-department meeting, how we're going to achieve certain things. And then day 1, the next AD comes in, he starts prepping and I start shooting. What we just prepped, and I shoot for 8 days. And the AD who is just shooting comes to prep, and we rotate. So he's got a brand new director. So my director and I go and start shooting for 8 days with the crew that's always shooting.
How many directors do you usually run through in like a season for a show?
Well, like Homeland, if the season's 12 episodes, we have a producer director that's in-house, and he'll probably do 2 or 3 of them, and then the other, that'll leave 9. So 9 directors, and some directors will do 2 episodes if they're lucky enough to get that much work. So I would say you got about 9 directors.
Who's the boss?
Ultimately, the line producer is in charge of the money, and his boss is the executive producer of the writers. But the writers, like for Homeland and for Gotham, are going to be in LA. For the Americans, they're in New York, they're right across the street, which is helpful because they could come and see what the issues are and help us right there on the set, make the decisions. So the boss is the line producer, the buck stops with him. He could say no to the director. Having said that, the writers hire the director, so they want him to say yes and try to make it work. So right under the line producer is the production manager who's overseeing 2 episodes at once, and then his 2 ADs, of which I'm one, which are taking care of the intricacies of each episode. One is prepping, one is shooting. That makes sense?
Yeah.
On The Good Wife, the writers are in LA, and we shoot in New York on The Good Wife. And I follow the writers on Twitter. The Good Wife writers have their own Twitter account.
Right.
And it's interesting that they talk about the difficulties of that, of having the writers in LA and producing in New York.
Right. And a lot of times I find writers in LA don't know how to write for New York. as well as.
And well,
they
The
should.
Good Wife is supposed to take place in Chicago. It's filmed
Oh,
in
is
New
it?
York because Chicago didn't want it, so New York took it,
Wow.
and the writers are in LA. So they're writing for Chicago, filming in New York, and the writers are in LA.
Wow.
But it's a brilliant show.
Yeah,
it's
it's a good show. I've
really
seen it a
a
few
brilliant
times.
show. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting how like all that.
Is Matt Zuckery in that? Matt Zuckery, the blonde-haired young lawyer, I think.
He was in the Gilmore Girls and
Yes.
something else.
Yeah. He was in Hack. I worked with him in Hack. So got a cab driver in Philly. Played a blind kid. But anyway. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
Any directors guild besides New York? Like, are there any other type of guilds, and are there guilds somewhere else besides New York, like, you know, probably like California or
Yes. Well, it's the
Florida.
Directors Guild is one guild. It's a national guild.
National.
Directors Guild of America, as opposed to some of the unions. We're a guild. Some of the unions, like the trade unions, are locals. Like if you're a grip and electrician, you're in local 52. If you're in camera, you're in local 600, which has a national branch, but that's the local. It's a different rate of pay in New York than you are in LA or in Charlotte. If you're in the camera, because you're different locals, you have different contracts. The Directors Guild is one, so I'll make the same amount of money here. Well, I'll make the same amount of money whether I'm working on this movie or that movie or this TV show. If I go to different locations, the rate may change, but it's all one. It's all one union. Yeah. Anything else?
Anybody? Round of applause.
Round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you, Louis.
Nice to meet you. I hope you got what you wanted.
Oh, yeah.
I got what I wanted.
What does that mean?
I know what I want to be when I
Home and
pretend to
away.
grow up.
Yeah.
When you pretend to grow up.
When I pretend grow up.
What do you want to